Hello, art friends, and happy spring. Almost. It's definitely spring here in Northern California. The trees are blooming and all of the plants are starting to sprout up. In this video, I'm going to use up some of the scraps from a workshop that I did where we created some collages with very limited color papers. And I'm doing this based on inspiration of some beautiful mustard fields. This last week, I did a mixed media workshop where we worked on creating some painted papers to do some collages and some other things. And I was inspired by the beautiful fields of mustard at the ranch where I ride. They also do organic farming there. So they use the wild mustard as a rotation crop to replenish the soil. And the nice thing about mustard is that it comes up very, very late in the winter, early spring. So while all the trees are still without leaves and kind of silvery gray, the fields are this beautiful blanket of bright yellow. So I thought when I did this workshop, because the idea was to use a limited palette to create some painted papers, I would use that as my inspiration. So you can see I've got like all these bright yellows and beautiful greens. These were some of the colors that I did off the plate. I actually pulled some grass and did some prints with some actual plants. Now these aren't the mustard plant. The mustard plant is very delicate. So I actually picked one and I'm in the process of drying it. So I've got it between some wax paper. And what we did with these is really simple collage. Again, this is just like 5 or 6 pieces of collage paper. We were all focusing on composition and using white space. And I did this one and I liked it, but I thought it just needed something else. So my thought is, once this gets dried, to actually put this on here, if I can figure out how to get it on there. The petals are very delicate. You can see it does sort of flake apart. So I may have to kind of spray fix it on the wax paper so everything kind of stays in place, and see if I can carefully glue it on there somehow. The other option is I could take and just create a contour outline of the mustard plant with just a black liner pen or something like that, or create something on my gel plate where I do kind of a transfer so it's not a completely solid line, but just a basic image of a mustard plant. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. One of the other things we talked about was using some of the natural elements in a collage. So here was another collage that I did as a demo for the workshop, and sort of layering and how to sort of abstract some of the stuff using those bright sort of colors. And finally, I had them do a larger collage. And the larger piece here is actually part of a piece from one of my paint palettes. So I use silicone mats for my paint palettes when I'm doing gel print stuff, like I'll roller off on it. So I generally get a lot of these really beautiful sort of layered roller marks of different colors. So what I do then with the silicone mat is I just put some matte medium over it, and this is actually tracing paper. Throw some tracing paper on it and just leave it sit overnight, and then it just peels right off the mat, and I have this beautiful collage paper that I can use. So this larger piece here is part of this that I tore up. You can see like all the different colors as I was rollering here. And I've got some other pieces. This is, a little bit thicker paint in that area, but I've got a bunch of other little pieces here. I'm going to see if I can do a smaller collage on this page with what I have left here. I also have some of these that were created on the gel plate, just with creating some texture. I wanted something that was a little bit more dark in value, so I created some sort of dark blue that goes with it. And you'll see that on my palette, I actually had some of that darker blue. So it does kind of go within this colors theme. Maybe I'll start with some of these pieces. And I have some nice bright yellow. So maybe we'll start with some of that. Kind of like to balance it out a little bit. I think this maybe came off from over here. I do definitely want to get some of these darker papers in here. I don't know if I like both vertical and horizontal lines. So this is really this, but like the negative of it. So it's like the ghost print I took after I printed this. So you'll see it has stripes on it. But I kind of like those together. It's just a question of how do I incorporate that? That's not too bad. And again, I try to think of these very simply based on composition, balancing out colors and sort of textures. I try not to overthink it because I find then it just gets too busy and a little bit scattered. So I like these that kind of mimic up here. I could try swapping these a little bit. See if there's another. I don't know if I like this big open spot down here, so maybe I need to pull this yellow down a little bit. I like having this little gap here. I could push them together, but I kind of like having that little gap of yellow there. It also is reminiscent of the lines in these pieces. Everything's got kind of a vertical feel to it. So I'm kind of going to go with that, I think. Don't think this would really work vertically. Not so much. I liked it better kind of over here. It also kind of reminds me of trees, and the mustard fields that I was looking at, as you saw in the pictures, have hills behind them. So it's kind of in a valley up in the foothills towards the ocean side. And it has these really pretty green sort of hills in the summertime that show up. And then obviously they turn brown as the summer goes on. So this kind of reminds me of the hills, I think, a little bit. The fields are also lined by fences. So they have posts and wire fences. So this could also be reminiscent of the fence. So I think there's sort of multiple ways to kind of look at this. It's just finding a composition I like. Maybe this comes down a little bit. Now things are going to look a little bit different once I glue it down because the yellow is obviously a transparent paper. So when I glue it down, it's going to show through some of the other stuff that's here. So it may not be as vibrant, like where it overlaps other colors. That's something you have to keep in mind when you work with transparent papers. You lay everything out like this and it looks great, but then when you glue stuff down, sometimes it doesn't quite work. I feel like I need some green, some of the darker green up here. So I have a little piece there, or I could rip a piece from there. I think the color's okay. I don't know if I like the little point there. Just sort of to bring that green up a little bit. Again, I don't want to overthink this. I want to use up some scraps and just kind of see what I can come up with. I think I'm happy with this as is. I may adjust the yellow up or down a little bit when I glue it down. We'll have to see. And I may, debating on whether I need a little yellow piece up here, and it could be even smaller, just to kind of bring up. All right, I think I'm going to glue this down, and then I'll think about whether that makes sense to add once I see it glued down. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll start a corner just to get it down while it's in place, and then glue the rest of it so I don't get it like off when I'm gluing it. Now, I'm one that tends not to use a lot of glue. I know some collage artists just sort of soak everything in glue in the matte medium. I tend not to do that, one, because I think it kind of over wets the base wherever you're gluing it onto, and it's has more of a tendency to wrinkle. And two, I think it's just a wasting matte medium. Like, you don't need to put it on, especially with these thin papers. It doesn't need to be super thick. So for collages like this, also where I have paper on the edge, one of the other reasons why I don't like to use a lot of matte medium, even though it does dry clear, is sometimes it changes kind of the look of that white area of the paper. And so if I were to like frame this or decide I wanted to, matte it, and in the light at a certain angle, you may see that matte medium, even though this is matte and it shouldn't have a shine to it. Sometimes looks different on the paper. So I'm also really aware of like not going too far off. So I kind of like this as it is too, because now these layers have kind of mushed together. So you've got that really cool layer effect. But we're going to keep going. We're going to finish our way out. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the mustard plant, but here's a one that I was drawing again. They have a lot of really teeny little pieces. So they're kind of like growing up. So I'm wondering if maybe putting something up here that looks a little bit like, I mean, that kind of looks like a little heart. Maybe that's not what I'm going for. That looks like sort of the flower part of the mustard. And again, this is on tissue paper or really, yeah, I think this is tissue paper. So it's going to sort of soften in. So maybe that's all right. I think what I'll do is continue that down on this side. Just from that line. And then that will sort of follow that same sort of path down here. And it's finished. Again, it's just a very simple collage with scraps left over from other projects. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Just think about balancing out your colors and making sure that you have a variety of sizes of pieces and have fun.